Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to How to Win Contracts in the Manufacturing Sector webinar. My name is Eva Foran, Supply Chain Development Manager at Cumbria Chamber of Commerce. In a nutshell, manufacturing is the process of converting raw materials, components and parts into finished goods that meet a customer's expectations or specifications. Contrary to widespread perception, UK manufacturing is strong, with the UK currently the world's 9th largest industrial nation. Manufacturing makes up 10% of GVA and 45% of UK's exports and directly employs 2.7 million people. Now, how much is that worth? Well, it's worth a staggering 367.7 billion in 2016. So that's a lot of money. Successive governments have encouraged growth in the industry, particularly in high-value manufacturing. We have witnessed the development of catapult centers, the Advanced Manufacturing Supply Chain Initiative, and the Cumbria Manufacturing Services. Now, some of you will know catapult centers are designed to enable companies to access equipment, expertise, and information needed to develop and commercialize ideas and innovations. Each center has a specific focus on an area of manufacturing. For example, Nuclear Advanced Manufacturing Research Center, which is focused on supporting companies to get fit for nuclear. In Cumbria, the Cumbria Manufacturing Service is designed to support eligible manufacturing SMEs to streamline their processes, drive up production capacity and innovation, and improve business systems and access new markets. So the opportunities are really out there for you as a business to grab a share of the manufacturing business. We have some of the largest manufacturing business right here at our doorstep. So where do you fit in the manufacturing sector supply chain? Well, I urge you to think outside the box. Manufacturing sectors span across a range of industry, from nuclear, automotive, through to food and drinks manufacturing. However, we also understand this is not without challenges that businesses face when working with large organizations. To help you overcome some of these challenges, Cumbria Growth Hub, the one-stop shop for business support, has developed the online supply chain gateway to help you understand what procurers in large organizations expect from suppliers, and more importantly, how to meet their procurement needs to land lucrative contracts. Essentially, what we're doing through the Growth Hub is to help businesses do more business with other businesses. We offer you joined-up thinking and a holistic approach to help you. When you approach us for advice, we draw on a full range of support available from ourselves and from others to offer you a personalized package, therefore maximizing the benefits to you. And I urge you to grab what is on offer. It is here to help you grow your business. Just as a taster on what we can offer you business planning, action planning, free one-to-one advice with professional business advisors. We can offer you workshops, training courses to help you on bid writing and to get your accreditation. We offer you networking events, and we can also even offer you access to subsidies. And in addition, we have linkage into other initiatives such as Cumbria Manufacturing Service, Fit for Nuclear, all these that can help you. So support is available. Please do give us a call. My details are on the screen. There will be an opportunity for Q&A session at the end, and I would encourage you to submit your questions at any time during the session, and we will pick this up at the end. And I'm going to now pass you over to Alan Smithson from AAS Business and Technical Solutions, who will give you an overview on how to get your business fit to work in a manufacturing process-driven environment. Alan has a wealth of experience in the manufacturing sector, working with the likes of Vickers Shipbuilding and Engineering, now obviously known as BAE Systems, and through his own business has contracts with the NDA, Chamber of Commerce, amongst others. So I shall hand you over to Alan now. Alan, over to you.
Thanks very much, Eva. Good evening, everybody. Yes, I've been working in engineering for about 25 years before I moved into business advice, which I started to do just over 10 years ago. So I've worked in a number of different sectors, as Eva said, defense sector, also process engineering, the automotive sector in mass production, and a number of other areas. Predominantly, I was working in research and development, but the main reason for my representing manufacturing here this evening is because R&D is not much use unless you think about how you're going to make the thing that you've been designing in the first place. So tonight I realize it's a very broad subject and it's very difficult to cover everything in a short webinar. So what I hope we can give you is a taster of the kind of things that we could offer as the Growth Hub, and perhaps run you through what might be a typical journey of a manufacturing supply chain company trying to gain business with a new customer. So first of all, how do you find a new customer? Marketing people would call this market research. That's right. How do we start? The first thing is that people buy from people. So you need to get into a network. You need to meet people who may become your customers one day. There are a number of networking opportunities running locally. The Chamber runs them. Britain's Energy Coast Business Cluster also runs networking events. And there are a number of other forums that you can use to make contacts. And it's not just about making a contact, not just exchanging business cards. It's also about keeping in touch with those people in case something comes up from them that may be of interest to you. Often these membership organizations have a list of their members on their websites, and that's a really good place to find a list of potential customers. You can also buy marketing lists if you want to do that, but in doing the market research you need to look around to see where you may find a potential customer and then start to cultivate that customer. You don't want to be buying from or selling to a customer where there is financial issues. So you must do some level of due diligence on the customer before you start to get serious about bidding for work with them. There are a couple of ways of doing this online. You can use a site called DueDil, or you can use Companies House, just to give a reasonable idea of what's going on with that business. Is it growing? Is it in financial difficulties? You may want to get serious and do a credit check, which you probably would have to pay for. And all of this is to ensure that you're not wasting your time to try to get business from a company that is not going to be financially stable. Let's look then at who has won tenders. Later on we'll talk about how we can bid into tenders, but one of the ways of finding where business is likely to be got is seeing who has recently won a tender. So if you look on the tender websites that I'll refer to you later on, you may then find a potential customer who has won a tender in an area that you think you could supply into. And that's a really good source of leads. Also, a number of these potential customers will be keeping their followers informed on social media. So cultivate that presence. Look at what they're doing. Follow them. Keep an eye on their websites and on their social media activity. It may give you a little bit of an early lead on what's happening. And finally, on market research, let's not forget export. Export is particularly good at the moment in terms of the exchange rate that we have. So if you're looking for support to try to find export markets, working with DIT that we can refer to is a very useful method of finding potential new customers in export markets. So having done some market research, we then need to see whether there are any opportunities out there. An obvious place to look is, as I referred to earlier, tender websites. So there are a number of these. You can find them on the internet. Tender 24/7, OJU, Tenders Daily, TED, Contract Finder, The Chest. There are lots of them out there. Take a look, and if you're having difficulties, please contact the Growth Hub, and we have specialist advisors who can assist you with this. but also word of mouth. If you're cultivating a network of people who are potential customers and you're keeping in contact with them, you may find out about something just through a conversation with these people. After all, people do business with people. Referrals are also important. If you've got a group of existing customers, particularly customers who are happy with what you're doing, ask them to give you a referral to somebody else that they may know, or at least give you a testimonial. They may know about upcoming opportunities that have not yet been published, and that's a really good way of getting ahead of the competition and trying to find a new opportunity. Marketing campaigns. I'm not talking about our own marketing campaigns here. I'm talking about our potential customers' marketing campaigns, because where they are marketing, the areas that they're marketing to and the things that they're saying indicate what you may be able to sell to them, because that shows the intention that they have for the future. And again, social media. Often people will publish on social media the fact that they have won a bid or that they're in the process of trying to recruit staff for a new contract. If that's the case, then there's a possibility of you being able to be a supplier. Keeping aware of what's going on out there is the essential part of gaining new opportunities. Having identified an opportunity, we need to be sure that we are ready to supply to that customer. In this process, I've called it pre-qualification. It's called lots of different things, but I just called it that. And there's a checklist, really. Often this is referred to as a pre-qualification questionnaire, but we can do this informally within the business, and we can actually look, as if you book an appointment with a Growth Hub advisor, we could look at your readiness to supply. And some of the questions that might come up, this is by no means an exhaustive list. For example, do you have a quality management system, and does it conform to ISO 9001? In my early career, I was a design engineer, and I remember one meeting where one of the customers had come in. I was meeting with several high-ranking managers within the business, and they were telling deeply untrue things to the customer who'd come in, trying to convince the customer that the quality management system conformed to what he wanted. Don't do it. If you don't have a system that qualifies, do something about it. Don't try to tell lies to make it happen. ISO 9001 isn't always required, and it isn't always the biggest burden that you could think of. So if you're thinking about trying to find a new quality management system, you should consider trying to get a subsidy from the Growth Hub. That means that we could give you a subsidy of up to 40% towards the costs of bringing in an external professional quality consultant to assist you with upgrading your quality system. Similarly, customers will be looking for environmental management systems. An example is ISO 14001. They'll also be looking for health and safety. 18001 is another example of that. And information security, 27001, and also the upcoming GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. They are all very important areas, and again, this is something where if you need external professional assistance to improve your internal systems, please come and talk to us. We may be able to help you with some finance towards that. Do you have an employee appraisal scheme and a skills matrix? Do you manage your employees? Your employees are your most important resource. The team that you have can make or break your business. It's very important that we continue to develop our employees, and at the moment, there are free training places being offered throughout Cumbria for some levels of training, which is definitely worth contacting us to talk about. What's your management structure like? Is it fit for purpose? Is it allowing the growth? Is it allowing the business to perform in the way that it should? Again, don't make this up. I remember working on a major project for a European car company. We were a supplier owned by an American group, and the American vice president told us to supply some names to the customer to say who was going to be on the project. Those names were supplied, but in fact, they were not on the project. Don't make it up. It never works. There's also a possibility where if you're looking to pre-qualify for the possibility of bidding towards a contract, there's a possibility of working with other businesses in collaboration, in a consortium with partners or through a joint venture. That's definitely something worth considering and has brought really, definite benefits in the oil and gas and nuclear sectors. As we continue to talk about pre-qualification, pre-qualification questionnaires are often issued by customers, which gives you a guidance on how to get ready to bid to them. That can be followed in certain cases, and I've been involved with a couple of these, where the customer will come to audit you to look to see whether there are any gaps in your systems, any gaps in what you can provide. And this is not actually an adversarial occasion. This is the customer who is seriously interested in you as a supplier coming in to help you out, to identify where you need to improve. Again, if there are gaps which are identified there, please talk to the Growth Hub, because we are possibly able to help you to plug those gaps and to improve the situation. Manufacturing capacity and capability. Eva referred to the AMRC and the catapults earlier. They are very high precision and quality manufacturing areas with great skills, but you may find that your capacity and capability are not quite what you need to gain the business that you're looking for, that you may need to invest. In that case, I suggest that you contact the Growth Hub and talk to us about the possibility of seeking grant funding or loan funding, because it's important that your manufacturing capacity and capability is up to scratch. Lifetime quality records are often required by oil and gas and nuclear contracts and others, and basically this is a piece of paper that follows the component or the assembly around. And you may make a fantastic job of what you're manufacturing, but when it reaches the customer, if the paperwork is not right, they will not be able to use it and you will not get paid. So it's very important to keep these records correct. Stores and inventory control. This is where lots of money is tied up and things can get lost. You need to have good traceability and records. This will be part of your quality management system, and you need to have good control of your work in progress so that you can shortcut any quality issues before too many have been made, and also that you know how much value you've got in work in progress. Lean, Six Sigma and other best practices. These are means that are often used in mass production, like the automotive and also the aerospace sectors, but they do have applications also in bespoke manufacturing. And if you are interested in these, if you want to improve the quality and the productivity of your systems, I would suggest that you again contact the Growth Hub, and we'll refer you to the Cumbria Manufacturing Service, who are specialists in this area and can assist. Finally, on pre-qualification, businesses are about making money. If your business is not robust enough to cash flow the project, remembering on some of these projects you have to wait 4 months before you get paid, you have to really ask yourself, is it worth my while considering this? Or is there something else that I can do to improve my financial situation? So let's move on now to the actual bidding process. Normally you'll receive an invitation to tender if your pre-qualification questionnaire and your customer audit are okay. Responding to that is not just a question of answering the questions. Do more. Use the whole word count on the form. Stress your unique selling proposition. Stress what makes you special, because there will be too many people who are going to respond to this tender who just answer the questions yes and no. They will not succeed. Those who succeed are those who tell a really good, true story. Also, you can see when you get the invitation to tender, normally they publish a marking scheme with that. That gives you an idea of which areas within the tender have the emphasis. And those are the areas to concentrate on first if you're under time pressure to submit. Specifications are key. Everybody who works in manufacturing are aware of that. Don't assume. If the specifications are not clear, ask. The bid writers might not be aware that there are ambiguities. I remember working with M-Sport a while back, and they were manufacturing rally car suspension. One component could only be made out of a certain steel. because of the strength requirement. If you couldn't get that steel, you couldn't manufacture the component. So the specifications within the tender are key, and if you do have questions, you must ask to have them clarified. Again, quantities. Normally quantities will be specified, but we know that these can go up and down. So when you make your offer, when you make your bid, ensure that you qualify the number of parts that you're talking about. The last thing we want to have is you quoting for 500 components and having to manufacture 5 components for the same price, because you'll lose money. Pricing and overheads. You can lose a bid by being too cheap. I had a client who was very successful to supply into the nuclear sector, but when they first bid into the sector, the customer said to them, "We love you, we think you're great, we want to buy from you, but you're too cheap." Don't be too cheap. Be assured that your overheads are correct. Don't just assume that they're okay from last time. And ensure also that you leave room for negotiation. When you win the tender, there may be a round of negotiation as well. So you need to leave a little bit of margin in there to cover that. Often there are changes within a project and revisions. This is an opportunity to make money if you carefully write your bid. Because if there are changes, which can mean changes in materials or processes, it will have a significant effect on the cost of the components. So ensure that you refer to these when you do your bid. Payment terms. They should be very clear within the tender, and you must use these when you do your cash flow forecasting to ensure that you can cover the expenditure of making the components and shipping them before you get paid. Terms and conditions and legal parts of this. If necessary, take legal advice on this, and if you're a chamber member, we also offer legal support into this area. Let's talk a little bit about intellectual property. This needs to be clear. If you're developing something which is unique, it's probably going to be in your interest that you retain the intellectual property, the patent or whatever. This needs to be covered clearly within the bid. You cannot actually revoke it if there is something within the bid that infers that your customer owns the intellectual property that you've developed. There may also at the end of the contract be a retention in that some money is kept back until the job is finished. Factor those in your cash flow so that you are aware that money may not be coming in for 3 to 6 months after the end of the project. Sometimes environmental disposal costs need to be factored in, and these can change. So within the bid, if these are in there, it's worth saying that these are variable costs and are not firm within the bid. Project management is important. Otherwise, the project may not run to time, and you may find that people will ask in terms of your qualifications. Do you have a Prince 2 qualification or something similar? And what is your system, and who is going to manage the project? So ensure that you've got sufficient detail describing the project management. Do you need credit or loan requirements to fund this project? Find out now and negotiate a good deal at the beginning. No good going there in the middle of the project. Communication is key. There are more problems due to bad communication than anything else within projects. So ensure that you have enough resource and enough cost provided within the project to have excellent communication between yourself and your customer. The biggest problem, in my experience, with bidding for projects is underestimating. Don't do it. Wherever you can, do detailed estimates, do detailed costings, so that you are minimizing the potential of risk. Underestimating will end up losing you money, and it will damage your reputation. Within the project, there are bound to be extras. Things that haven't been thought of, things that are additional to what the customers asked for. It's important to have an idea of what the charging structure for these extras should be. And within the project, sometimes you get a requirement to have a year-on-year price reduction. So you need to have the possibility of doing some value engineering within the project if it runs over a period of time. This is an opportunity to showcase your R&D opportunity and to sell your capability, because you may be able to improve the design or the process or both of whatever you're supplying to the customer in order to reduce the costs. So having submitted the bid, there are two possible outcomes: losing and winning. So let's talk about losing first of all. It's not always a disaster. You should see, if you lose the bid, seek detailed feedback from the tender process. Find out what went wrong, get the details, talk to the customer and ask. Keep on asking what's gone wrong so that you can improve from this, and also internally debrief. Find out what was the impression of people who were involved in the preparation of the bid. Ask them what they felt could have been done better, so that you can put together an improvement strategy and tactics for the next time. There will be a next time. Don't give up. Having lost one bid, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose them all. It may be that you need to invest, and we talked a little bit earlier about Growth Hub being able to refer you to funding streams such as loans and grants. Come and talk to us if you need to invest. Restructuring. It might be that one of the reasons that you lost the bid was that your management structure or part of the business structure is not, in the eyes of the customer, fit for purpose. So it might then be worthwhile having an advisor come meet with you and talk about how the business is structured. Often businesses have an old structure that they've grown up with, but they've actually grown out of. And as the business grows, they need to restructure, and there are lots of different ways of doing that, but it's definitely worth reconsidering that. There may be a need for training, and as I referred to earlier, there are certain free training offers on at the moment within Cumbria. Please come and talk to us. We'll refer you to the Edge, and we'll see what we can do in terms of providing training, but also we can broker you to training that's paid for if you need this in specific areas. What can be improved on your internal systems? Again, this is an area where the Cumbria Manufacturing System and the Growth Hub Specialist Advisors could assist with you if you found out that there are gaps in those areas. So what happens if you win the bid? Is that a good thing? Yes, it is if you've done the bid correctly. But check that the contract hasn't changed. Check that the contract lines up with what you've bid for. If it doesn't, don't sign it. You bid against a particular document. Don't let them change it on you. If you want to get paid, you need to register as a supplier with them and provide the financial information, the bank account numbers, so that you can get paid. I know it's a basic step, but some people don't do that soon enough and don't get paid quickly enough. Relationships are key. It's very important to establish a relationship with your customer, to work together, to form a team with them, and the start of this is to have a really efficient kick-off meeting to introduce the teams from both sides, talk about the responsibilities which each team member has, and in general to start the formation of what will be a high-performance work team. Communication paths are crucially important. Bad communication or unclear communication leads to lots of delays and extra costs, and it has been the single biggest problem with many projects with which I've been involved. Communication paths must be clearly defined. In some cases you employ what's called a point person in certain areas, so that there is always one-to-one communication between these two people in certain areas of the project. That means there are no mixed messages. Resist the temptation to allow the receptionist or somebody else like that to have a conversation with the customer. Always take a message and go back to them. Have the right people talk. And also, if you have a CRM system or Outlook or something like that, ensure that there are records kept of all of these conversations and communications so that you can refer back to them if there are any disagreements in the future. Build a team with the customer, get to know them, go to social events with them. You're likely to work with them for a long time, and you want to continue to work with them if you've done the bid so that you can make money. So it's important to build the team. What we're aiming for is that we don't have any surprises. We might have an occasional nice surprise, but we certainly don't want any nasty ones. And what I'm trying to describe here is a means to avoid unpleasant surprises within the project. One way to avoid the surprises, the nasty ones, is to manage the expectations and don't overpromise. You may watch a program called The Apprentice. There was an episode of it a couple of weeks ago which I caught part of, and the team had been asked to quote for clearing up dog poo. Now, this is not particularly manufacturing, as you can imagine, but they quoted for it and the customer agreed to the price. And just before they started, she said, "Oh, by the way, can you just clear up the bird poo as well?" It happened that there was far more bird poo than dog poo, so they couldn't finish the job. You've got to avoid the "can you just." I know that's a silly example, but I'm sure you're with me. Can you just can cost you time and money. Stick to the contract. If somebody comes with a "can you just," say, "Yes, we can, but it will cost you this much money and time." How to run the project when you've won the project, how to run it. Report accurately and on time. Keep the customer fully updated with what's happening. Communication, again, is key. Have regular progress and review meetings. Again, I mentioned earlier CRM systems, things like Outlook and the other CRM systems that are available out there. Ensure that you've got evidence of what's happened in all of these conversations. Conflict is likely. In fact, it's almost bound to happen. This is why the relationship building at the beginning of the project is key. Because actually, if there is conflict, if you have developed a relationship with your customer, you can say to them, "Look, we're in this together. We're going to try to solve this problem. Let's not fight about it. This has happened. Let's try to solve it together." And that conflict can then be redirected into continuing to build a strong team, addressing the issue together. It may be that the customer requests modifications and revisions. These are not free of charge. Remember, you must get an agreed cost from the supplier, from the customer rather, to do these changes. And finally, keep the evidence for at least 5 years. If we continue thinking about running the project, when you invoice, ensure that you get the invoices in on time and also that you get paid on time. You must guard against bad debt. It's really, really important to ensure that the payments are coming in. There may be penalties. There may be financial penalties if something has gone wrong. Evidence is needed to enforce these penalties, which is why it's really important to have a good record of what's happened during the project. If there is no evidence to support the penalty, then there is every likelihood that you will not be able to, not be needing to pay it. As I mentioned earlier, you can maintain the relationship with the client even when things go wrong. A few years ago, I was working with an automotive company. They needed to change the specification in the system that we were developing for them to comply with a change in the law. And they phoned up. I had a good relationship with the gentleman that I was working with there. He phoned up and said, "Can we change this?" And we were able to change it for him, and we were able to maintain that relationship. So that's an area where team building has borne fruit, so that we can actually work together when things go wrong that are beyond both the customer and supplier's control. In exceptional circumstances, going the extra mile brings dividends. Doing something extra special for the customer to get them out of trouble will bring dividends. It will improve the relationship, and it will allow you to look at new business from the same customer in the future. As you go through the project, you'll have an ideal opportunity to find out what's coming up, whether there's going to be new contracts, more work coming, or whether you can upsell in the existing contracts, sell something different or sell more services within the same project or contract. You also have an opportunity, because of this early knowledge of future projects, to influence them, so that if you are a specialist manufacturer, you could then possibly suggest to your customer, why don't you use this particular type of method that we have just developed internally, and that then gives you an edge, an advantage in trying to gain business in the future. We then move on to completing the project. This is good news. Again, evidence of completion, evidence that everything has been done, that the bid has been fully complied with, that any changes have been evidenced and have been completed, and the costs have been agreed. The price variations to any changes are within the completion statement of the project. If there are any penalty clauses, that they are enumerated, that the evidence is shown, and that they have been complied with. All of this is part of a detailed, agendaed closure meeting to complete the project, so that both sides agree that this job has been done correctly. Don't leave anything out. Have a comprehensive agenda. There are bound to be lessons learned on both sides for any project, and these will form the basis of a relationship going forward between you and this new customer who will now want to work with you in the future. If you have a retention, ensure it gets paid on time. Don't just expect they will pay it on time. Be after them. Look after when it gets paid, because you don't want to delay on that retention. And look for upcoming opportunities. This is a great chance to explore what's coming up from this customer and possibly from others that he may know about. We're going to move now to a poll slide. There are several questions on there, just to see what's interesting and what's difficult, or what are barriers to the areas that we've been talking about in the presentation. Okay, so thank you for listening so far, and thank you for taking part in the poll. We've got a question and answer session now that will last a few minutes. If you'd like to send your questions in using the keyboard on the screen, and we'll pick them up here. It may go quiet for a little while we digest what you're asking, but then we'll come back to you with answers.
Welcome back, everybody. I have a question here that has been given to me earlier on today because the lady that has given it to me are unable to attend this session. So Alan, as a small business who may not be able to work directly with large organizations, how do I go about building a partnership with other companies? How do I go about collaborating with other companies? I
think it starts with networking, really. This is it's a really good way to gain new business. As I mentioned in the presentation, it has been successful in terms of forming consortia and joint ventures. So it's finding businesses that are a similar size to your own, that have complementary abilities, so that together you could work together to supply into the supply chain. And also, actually, there are tiers within most large supply chains, as in TIERS, and they are within the tiers. There are opportunities for smaller businesses to supply directly to businesses who are lower in the supply chain than directly into the main customer. So a number of ways of doing that, but networking is the first way, doing market research in the same way that we were talking about networking and market research to find customers. Do the same approach to find collaborators and people to work with in joint ventures. Looking at the poll, we've got a couple of subjects that are very interesting. The first one is costings, and that's an interesting point of view, isn't it? It depends very much on the type of business that you have. If you're a machining company, you will know roughly how long it's going to take to machine a component. You will know what the material cost is. The area where a lot of people struggle is overheads, and I would suggest that it would be worthwhile talking to either your accountant or having an advisor from the Cumbria Manufacturing Service come to visit you to do an accurate assessment of the overheads, so that you can then produce an accurate cost. that cost is obviously needs to be marked up before it's the selling price, but you need to know what it's really going to cost you. Building into that any fluctuations in material costs due to exchange rates or to scarcity of material, and also anything that would be varied due to batch sizes. So as I mentioned in the presentation, it can be more cost effective to manufacture 500 than 5, and you need to know roughly what the batch size is going to be to get a good cost. One of the other areas that affects costing can be the recruitment of staff, and you may find that you need to take on more people. If that is the case, then you must be aware of both the overhead cost and the direct labour cost increase in terms of producing an accurate costing.
Thank you, Alan. Alan, and there's another question that's just come in from Kirsten Prosser, and Kirsten wants to know what support is out there to help smaller businesses put in place suitable joint venture stroke partnering arrangements that work for and protect both parties and are efficiently constructed, ensuring no gaps or overlaps. That's a really interesting question, Alan.
Very good question. Great question, and it's difficult to actually put support in place because it's almost like matchmaking, isn't it? So I think probably the way to respond to this, Kirsten, I really appreciate you asking the question, is if you have a business that you would like to work with, the two businesses together, in my view, should probably meet up with an advisor to discuss about what their plan is likely to be. It may be that it should be structured as a joint venture, as in a separate company that is owned by the two businesses, or it might be as a consortium where the businesses work together as associates. I think it's important to keep the identity of both businesses and not compromise the way the businesses are structured too much, because you don't want to damage what you've got. And in some cases I've seen it done where people actually, the joint venture takes on a key employee, for example, to ensure that the two businesses work together. So I think there's no easy answer to this. Each situation will be different. But I think if you are in a situation where you do have businesses, 2 or 3 or more, that want to work together, it's that desire that is key, because then there is the willingness from all parties to make things happen. There probably will be overlap, because most manufacturing businesses will have some degree of commonality in their functions within the structures. That's not a bad thing to have overlap. It's because it can actually act as a check and a balance from one business to the other. So there's not an ideal, not a straightforward answer to this, but if you are in that situation, then I would encourage you to take advice, to find out what professional advice is out there, to seek a subsidy from the Growth Hub, to bring in professionals if necessary, and also speak to Cumbria Manufacturing Service via the Growth Hub, who also bring in manufacturing specialists who have this area of expertise.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. Alan, if anybody's thought of any more questions at a later date, that's fine. Please send us an email and we'll do our best to respond to them. Again, just to round this up very quickly, at Cumbria Growth Hub, we can give you access, again, to one-to-one practical support to assist with overcoming some of the hurdles that Alan talked about. Alan mentioned access to different sources of funding. The 40% subsidies of up to £2,000 are available here to help your business grow and to operate more effectively and to increase your sales. So that sources of funding is available. We've also have manufacturers can also access grant funding through Cumbria Manufacturing Services. Again, there is a grant of up to 30% towards a £10,000 project. That is available, and that can go towards, for instance, what Alan mentioned, the expense of migrating to ISO 9001, and also access to a specialist manufacturing advisor. So all the help is here, is available. Just give us a call. Contact details are on the screen. Give me a call and I will do my best to put you in touch with the right business advisors and advice on sources of funding for you. So we look forward to hearing from you, and if you missed any points in this session, a link for the replay will be sent out to you within 24 hours, so you can replay the whole Alan session again. So from Alan and I, thank you for attending tonight. Thank you very much.